I love working with wire, and I've added wire details to projects before, but I've never tried building a design where the only decoration was wire. So I gave myself a little challenge. Create a design that beginners could make, but with room to add a little wire work if you're ready to give it a try. I had the idea of a small goldfish, something light and fluid and decorative. It's been swimming around in my head for a while now. So today we're gonna make it happen. Let's see how it goes. When I started sketching this little goldfish, I was thinking about how its fins would move, slow, flowing, with a bit of elegance. I wanted the shapes to be simple enough for beginners, but still leave room for wire overlay to add those delicate details. This is where I landed. Clean lines, soft curves, and just enough movement to feel alive. So I haven't entirely decided what color I want to do the goldfish. If it's going to be entirely orange, or I want to do it orange and maybe white. Because the style of the fish is a fancy goldfish, sometimes they are all orange, sometimes they're orange and black, sometimes they're orange and white, sometimes they're orange, black and white. So I'm kind of leaning towards orange and white, and I'm hoping to use scrap glass to make this project. So I'm gonna go grab my orange and white bins of scrap glass, and we'll take a look and see what I can find that I like. Okay, so I did go through my scrap glass and I'm not convinced about the colors that I have here. The orange, I didn't really find any colors that I thought were bang on for what I was thinking in my head. I do have a fallback orange that I can use, and I wasn't thinking of using a transparent color. The cathedral glass wasn't what I had envisioned when I was thinking of this project initially, but I did pull one out in case that's what I decide to use in the end. I don't think that's the way that I'm going to gravitate, but it's here as an option. And then I did end up pulling one out, which is kind of the coloring that I was thinking, although the pattern on the glass is kind of linear, which wasn't what I had in mind. But the coloring is more along the lines of what I was thinking. So now that I know I've exhausted the orange in my scrap bin, I'm going to go and see what I have on the shelf. Now for the white glass, I did find some scraps that I think I probably will use for the smaller fins. The large fin, I couldn't find a piece of scrap that was large enough to cover the tail fin, so I'm going to have to check and see if I have any sheets of glass that match this. This here is actually, it's a Spectrum, an original Spectrum glass that I have in my scrap. So I'm really hoping I still have some on my shelves that is still available to me to match this, because this is actually perfect, I think, for the fins. Okay, so now I have chosen a few orange colors and I did find a sheet of white, and I'm really torn. And I found this one. Now it's not the same color of orange that I'd originally said I wanted. I didn't have anything in the cupboard that was exactly like this. But this one, when I saw it, I thought, ooh, that really looks like goldfish orange, or yellowy gold color for goldfish. So I pulled this one out, and I really do like this one. Now this one does have a bit of translucency to it. So again, I'm back to that kind of thought that I didn't really want the fish, the body of the fish, to be translucent. But I really do like this color. But again, it wasn't what I had in mind. So I don't know if you guys ever get stuck at this where you have something in mind and then nothing quite fits that, and then you get stuck at that point. I get here stuck at this spot quite often, and then it becomes a bit of a hurdle that I have to jump over. and it's often with the colors. In the end, things quite often turn out just fine. It's a struggle that I have. I don't know if you guys deal with that. But moving forward, I have to pick a color. I did find another one, and that's this one here. And I thought it was pretty close when I was at the cabinet, but now that I'm under the lights of the table, it really isn't all that close at all. It looks very bland. So I'm not even gonna really see this one as an option right now because it just looks too bland. I really, really do wish that I had a larger piece of this color, but I don't. So after a little bit more deliberation, I've decided I'm going to make a brightly colored fish, and I'm going to go orange. I know I said I wanted to make this fish out of scrap glass, and I did find these 2 pieces of orange from my scrap bucket, but I'm not going to use the white. I've decided that he's going to be a nice brightly colored fish, and so I have this tiger orange from my scrap bucket, and there was this piece of orange in there too. It's virtually the same color, it's just a shade lighter. So the face is going to be just a shade lighter, and then the body will be out of the little bit darker orange. And then all the fins, I'm going to use this color orange. So I think it's going to pair quite nicely. It's going to make a very brightly colored fish. I think it's going to be fun. Before I move ahead and start cutting out the glass, I just wanted to pause here for a moment and point something out. This tail shape might be a bit challenging for new beginners. So if you find that this shape is too difficult for you, there is a very easy modification that can be made. And that is to simply break the tail into 2 pieces, which will eliminate the difficult cuts. I'm going to proceed with making mine in 1 piece. So if you're interested in seeing how it's done, you'll be able to follow along and see how I do mine. I'm showing 3 different pieces being cut so that you can see how each type of cut and the 2 types of glass bring its own little challenge. The tail is the trickiest shape in this pattern. Lots of curves within the larger curve shape. I'm taking my time here to score each section carefully so I don't force a break in the wrong direction. This glass hasn't been breaking too nicely. It's not cooperating on the longer, straighter cuts, and it was almost crumbling into a powder on the deeper inside cut. I decided to stop breaking out the curve and finish the rest on the grinder. I didn't want to risk breaking the glass since this is the only piece that I have of this, and I wouldn't be able to cut another tail if I were to break this piece incorrectly. This small fin is cutting more easily than the tail fin, although it was still prone to crumbling when using the grosing pliers. Some materials are a little more brittle and just need a gentler hand. Now for the body. This glass cuts beautifully, and as you can see, some materials are just a dream to work with. This kind of clean break is what we hope for, and it's okay if it doesn't always happen. The key is learning how to adapt for different types of glass. So now I'll take this over to the grinder now and we'll clean up the edges. When I start grinding, my main focus is on smoothing the edges and removing the black marker lines. That's what gives me the most accurate shape based on the pattern. You'll see I test the fit on every piece. It's always easier to make adjustments as you go rather than address them later. With a more complicated shape like the tail, I stop grinding, pat the glass dry with a towel, and grab the tube of chapstick I keep near my grinder. I swipe it over the curvy areas where I want to preserve the marker lines. It helps keep the ink from washing off before I'm done. I don't use this trick all the time because you do need to clean the glass thoroughly afterward or it can interfere with the foil's adhesion. But for intricate shapes like this, it's a really helpful way to keep your lines in place until the piece is fully ground. So I'm done grinding and everything is fitting beautifully. I'm really happy with how this is coming along. I just wanted to point out that I did end up using a 1/4 inch bit for grinding in a couple of places, mostly for the tail. So if you are doing the tail as a single piece and not breaking it in half like I suggested in the beginning for beginners who might find the tail very difficult to do, if you're breaking it in half, you're not going to need the 1/4 inch bit. But if you are doing it as a single piece, you may find that the 1/4 inch bit is going to allow you to grind in here much more easily. I did use it a little bit on the inside curve on this side as well as in here because my 3/4 inch bit, which is what I have on my grinder as my standard everyday bit, is a little bit too wide to fit all the way inside this tight little curve in here. So the 1/4 inch bit, if you don't know, it's made to fit on the very top of the grinder shaft. And so I leave the 3/4 inch bit on to protect the machine so that water doesn't fall down inside. And then the 1/4 inch bit stacks on top of the 3/4 inch bit. And then I can grind those tight little pieces, the tight little curves inside there. So now that this is all fitting perfectly well, I can go ahead and start the foiling process. And before I start foiling, I suppose I need to decide what color I want to have the solder lines when it's finished. I don't want silver. It's kind of a toss-up right now between black and copper. The copper might be nice. It would be subtle, a little more subtle than the black. But I think the black with the orange would really make the orange pop. So yes, I think I'm going to go ahead and do black. I'm starting with a simple piece here, just to walk through the basics. But in a moment, I'll show you how I handle the deeper curves on the tail without tearing the foil. There's nothing tricky about this one, but I like to keep the foil centered and use consistent pressure the whole way around.
Now here's where things get a bit more interesting. The tail is full of curves, including one really deep inside curve. I'll show you how I foil it without tearing. When you have medium depth or deeper curves like this, I lay down one side of the foil at a time, but I do it slowly and in a very specific way. By rubbing my thumb along the foil several times, I can gently stretch it before laying it down on the glass. If you go slow enough to let the foil stretch, it won't split, and you won't end up with unsightly gaps in the solder seam. Now with this deep inside curve, the approach is basically the same. It just takes longer. The key here is to be extra patient and let the friction of your finger help the foil stretch gradually. I honestly think the warmth from your hand helps make it a little more flexible. It's also worth mentioning that the foil itself makes a big difference. I use Edco, and this is one of the reasons I love it. It stretches beautifully when you need it to. I've tried other brands and found they split more easily, which means more patching and extra time. Once you have one side done, you just flip the piece over and do the same thing on the other side. This foil took a little patience, but it laid down clean and smooth, even with those deep curves.
So my little fish is coming along really well. I'm quite happy with how it's progressing. I've got the foiling all complete and I'm now ready for soldering, which is my favorite part of the process. And so I'm just going to move right along and jump right in.
My flex brush had a bit too much on it here. You really don't want puddles of flux sitting on your project. That can lead to little spits of hot solder when the iron hits it. If that happens, just dab off the excess with a paper towel to avoid surprises.
So for this fish, we're going to be placing a hook somewhere on top of this fin to be able to hang him from. And because this fin is just attached to the top of the body and it would be supporting all of the weight of the suncatcher, it's best that we actually reinforce this fin. So I'm going to be placing a piece of finer wire into this seam and we're going to wrap it around the outer edge of the fin and come back down, and then we'll bury it back into the piece of into the seam between the tail and the body, and that's going to reinforce this fin so that when it's hanging and it's supporting all of the weight, it's not going to tear this fin off of the body.
Use a small pair of needle nose pliers to help you form the wire tightly into the corners as you work around the edge. The tighter you can fit it into the corners, the less noticeable it will be in the finished piece. Try to place the wire in the center of the glass and tack it down every ½ inch or so. Right now, I'm just getting it into place. I'll come back and bury it more fully once I know everything is laid out where it's supposed to be.
So my little goldfish is completely soldered now, and I did reinforce the top fin, and I've buried the wire completely inside the solder, so you don't even know it's there.
So, I didn't realize until I was editing the video that I made an error with the wire placement. I meant to start the wire in the seam between the head and body and finish it in the seam between the body and tail. I did start it correctly, but I accidentally placed the finishing end between the top fin and the body instead, so it's only partially reinforced. I can still fix this by adding a short patch of reinforcement wire from here to here, and that'll be just as solid as if I'd done it correctly the first time. I can't solder it just yet though. The paint I used for the eye hasn't cured, so I'll have to wait a few more weeks before I can add that final bit.
And you can't see it at all. So I can go ahead now and add my hook on here. But before I do that, I am going to go ahead and add some wire overlay. Now I do have a template that I made, and these can be used just as guidelines or suggestions. You can add as many wire overlays as you want to add some details to the fins, or you don't even have to add them at all. You can leave your goldfish just like this. Maybe an eye would be nice, that way you could see. But I am going to go ahead and add some wire overlay. You can add as many wires as you want or not. Whatever suits you is great, but I am going to go ahead and add some now.
I'm using pre-tinned 18 gauge wire and shaping it with my fingers to get a slight curve that matches the shape of the fin. Once I like the curve, I add a bit of flux and tack one end in place with my soldering iron. With that first end secured, I snip the wire to the proper length, flux the second end, and solder it down too. Using pliers to hold the wire firmly against the glass can help here. Keeps things snug and also saves your fingers from the heat conducted through the wire. Now that the wire is secure, I use the soldering iron to tidy up both ends. Once that's done, I give the wire a little wiggle to make sure that it's really secure and won't pop off with light pressure. Then I just continue the same process for the rest of the wires I want to add. Finally, once I've added the hanging loop and have it tacked in the spot I think I want, I grab my wire and make a hook and hang the fish to see how it balances. That way I can double check that the loop is in the right spot before fully soldering it in place.
My little fish is done and I'm tickled with how he turned out. But before I go ahead and show you what he looks like, I wanted to mention that I did add a few finishing details off camera. I went ahead and cleaned him up and gave him a black patina finish. If you're unfamiliar with how to add black patina, I do have a video for that on the channel for you. I will link it in the cards and the description. And then I went ahead and did a polish and I added some paint. Now, if you're unfamiliar with what paints to use on your projects, for something like this, I just used a craft paint, which is a glass craft paint. In this project, I used folk art enamels. We'll see if we can get a good capture here for you. So this particular paint, you can air dry it or bake it on. And if you're going to bake it on, you need to add it to the glass before you do your foiling and soldering. In this case, I didn't, so I added it on after. I guess it's time to show you what the final project looks like. So let me know what you think. Is this a kind of project that you would like to give it a try? And if you do, would you use the wire overlay? This was the first time designing a piece that uses wire as the only decorative element, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. If you're newer to stained glass, I hope that this project gives you the confidence to try adding wire. It's not as intimidating as it looks, and it opens up so many creative options for you. And if you would like to make this fish, the pattern is available. You can follow the link in the description below. And if you want to explore more techniques, I have full workshops available on my site that go deeper into things like building 3D, foil overlay, and layering. I'll link those below if you want to check them out. Thanks so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, subscribe for more stained glass projects, and I'll see you in the next one.